Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Wait, you can't, right? I forgot something. Let me know in the comments if you can hear me. Hi, everyone. Please let me know in the comments if you can hear me. We seem to be having many technical difficulties tonight. This last technical difficulty being me forgetting to plug in the microphone. I hope it works. Any indication? Otherwise, I'll just be sitting here talking to myself. Okay, great. Thanks. Awesome. So yeah, we are to discuss OHM's crime plan. That's the purpose of the specific live stream. There's less than 2 weeks till election. So this is is it 2 weeks? Oh, so yeah, it's 2 weeks. Yes. So 2 weeks minus a day until election. So there's still one more Thursday. So hopefully we'll be able to cover all of our statements. So the idea here is to focus on the crime, but I can quickly cover education as well a little later. And then next Thursday, we'll cover the rest. National sovereignty is up next after these. Hi, everyone. Some of you I saw just a couple of minutes ago, or should I say an hour ago? Feels like a couple of minutes. Please remember to like and also share the video. This is especially important because it outlines what sets OHM apart, why people should vote for OHM, why we have the solution, and why our plan is important. So share it with people, especially if you've been speaking to people about OHM and people that are brainwashed into thinking that you can only vote for one or two parties. It's really getting annoying. The indoctrination that I suppose has lasted many, many years, it's working. So it's going to take a lot to undo that. And one of those is that most people you come across will say, but voting for any other party but the one single opposition is a wasted vote. And that's absolute nonsense. No vote is a wasted vote. Not enough people are voting, and there's no such thing as too many parties. And technically, unless a specific political party states their allegiance, which has happened, technically all parties are in opposition to the ruling party that has more than 50% of the vote or whatever. So there's a lot of detoxing of indoctrination that needs to take place. But anyway, we're going to discuss the crime plan. But before we get into the crime plan, you'll probably see that it's not your typical crime plan in that we're not dictating what needs to be done at government level. That is because if you look at our government structure, I don't know how many of you have read the manifesto. Please say in the comments with a thumbs up or something if you've read the manifesto, OHM's manifesto. Maybe I should give everyone the link. Because the important parts that one needs to understand are the levels of government within this new democracy that we're envisioning. Yes, and for sure. It's only 10 pages. It's not a lot. There we go. I hope that works, that link. That will allow you to read the manifesto if you haven't. I see some new people here. Hi, Peter and TK and Lazal. If you haven't read, and hi, Jason, Herbie, and Zoltan, and everyone, please read the manifesto. So the 5 levels of government I'll go through quickly. And this is something that will be outlined in the new constitution that we're writing. Please keep in mind 2 things. Number 1, the new constitution for South Africa, we have not written yet. The manifesto serves as a framework for the new constitution. When we get down to actually writing the new constitution, we want to do it as legislators in parliaments, and we want to do it consulting some brilliant minds in the country as well, of which I'm trying to find. It's not easy. It's like finding needles in haystacks. But that needs to take place. So it hasn't taken place yet. I think another thing is some people, I've come across this twice in this election season, have gotten confused between OHM's internal constitution and the constitution we want to write for the country. So for some reason, people seem to think that our internal constitution is like a mirror image of what we want for the country. That couldn't be furthest from the truth. Nothing about the OHM's constitution is democratic. It is an organization that we're running, hierarchical in a way, in the sense that me, who came up with the idea, remains the leader forever until OHM reaches its goal. There's no internal elections and there's no internal politicking. And it's important that that happens so that the goal can be realized. What happens in normal political parties is that there's so much internal fighting and factions that they never actually achieve what they set out to do, and they end up becoming a completely different organization to what they set out to initially. And I recognized that pretty early on with my political experience, and that's why I decided with OHM it will be different, regardless of what the critics say. I mean, the way I see it, if I came up with the idea of OHM, I remain the leader forever. If you don't like that, then go ahead and start your own organization. Perfectly fine with me. And I think that's how it should be. So the country's constitution is going to be vastly different. You need to read our manifesto to get an idea of what it will look like. In the manifesto, we highlight the structure of government and the different levels of government. We currently, in the current system, have 3 levels, that being local, provincial, and national. In the new system, we're going to have 5 levels. First level being self-governance, second, the family unit, third, community, and then officially local and national. Those that have been to all the OHM meetings in person that took place in 2020 and 2021 and 2022 will know this firsthand and know this in detail. But when we come with a plan, not a policy, we come with a plan, a crime plan, an education plan. We're basing it on the 6 principles of OHM. We're basing it on the 4 values, and we're basing it on this mindset of the 5 levels of government, with the first level being self-governance. That is extremely important. You're always the first responder to any problem. Hi, Samkele. Thanks for joining. We're just getting started with OHM's crime plan. So it's important to note that with everything we tackle, we're going to look first from the individual outward. All other parties will look from, okay, we're in charge, we have the power, from government down, top down. We are not taking that approach. It's extremely important to remain free, to be in a country that honors individual liberty, that it's a real bottom-up approach. So in our crime plan, there's nothing about SAPs except that you shouldn't wait for them. It's all about your responsibility to take care of your safety and security. And it's by all means not all inclusive. It's not completely comprehensive. We just want to bring across the point that you as an individual have the right and the responsibility to defend yourself and your family and your property. That is your job. It means sometimes don't be stupid. Don't make silly decisions. Be aware of your surroundings. Be empowered with knowledge and skills to make sure that you stay safe. It's your responsibility to stay safe. You don't want the United Nations or its subsidiaries or the government to keep you safe, because they will remove your freedom. So if you're on here, I assume, if you're in this live stream somehow, I assume that you care to a degree about freedom. Otherwise, none of this will make sense to you. If you don't put individual liberty first in your life, none of OHM's solutions will make any sense. And I think that's sometimes where people have this departure, because they haven't got freedom as a priority. But I think sometimes just a little bit of education can wake them up and put freedom as a first priority. So the public statement, crime plan, we talk about how, first and foremost, the United Nations, for a long time, as well as the government, wants to disarm populations, technically, in order to have peace in our nations. And I think that's quite funny and ironic and stupid, because as long as there's organizations that are more powerful than an individual, then an individual needs something more powerful in which to look after themselves and protect themselves. And that's what we have made provision for in our crime plan. And I'd like to start with the 10 points. I think the 10 points is nice and concise. and sums it up very nicely. Hi, Jacques. Who is Colleen Settings? Settings. That cannot be his surname. And Herman Lombard. Who are they? Give me a bio. And then Desi Slava. Hi. The country seriously needs movement in power. No party will ever bring good because to be a party, they need to obey big bosses. Hence, they are all the same. I'm loving OHM and pray for the best. Thank you. That's the way I see it as well. It's not just parties. Any organization, any educational institution, even an NGO, for instance, all organizations, for some reason, just fall prey to the mindset that controls populations or controls their constituents or whoever. It's interesting. I don't know where it comes from. I have an idea, obviously. I mean, but still, I don't know why it's so prolific in absolutely any organization that exists in this world, country, world. I think it's the whole world. I haven't yet found an organization like OHM that truly honors individual liberty. There's always someone trying to exert control somewhere. And it's weird. It's weird, but it's human nature as well. So OHM is unique in that sense. So thanks for that comment. But let me go through the 10-point plan first, which is right at the end of the manifesto. What am I doing? Let me put the link in the comments so you can read along with me. Hi, Jarita. There we go. So you can read along with me. I'm going all the way to the bottom of the document to read the 10-point plan, to go into that a bit. To those that just joined, we are viewing all problems from the perspective of the individual solving it first before government takes on the responsibility of solving the problem. And you'll have to read our manifesto to properly understand that. Crime. Crime is a 10-point. OHM has a 10-point crime plan. Number 1, don't be a criminal. This one might sound funny, but I do think if more people in the country lead their lives with authentic integrity, it will improve the collective consciousness of this whole country. So many people might not be involved in blue-collar crimes or deep fraud, or they might not be murderers or rapists, but they still might be unethical in smaller ways, maybe not break laws, maybe break a couple of bylaws, things like littering, things like not respecting other people's liberty to varying degrees, or just being unethical, like I said, or lying. Lying is bad. It's not a crime to lie. Everyone's free to lie. But if you do not walk around on this planet with authentic integrity, it literally sends bad energy in the rest of the country. That's the way I see it. So the more people that take upon themselves that responsibility to be better humans, the better the whole country will be, because that will have such a ripple effect on the entire population. So what we have is that people are just sitting back, being worse humans instead of being better humans, because the government's failing, because we have such poor leadership. So it's time that we acknowledge that we are the leaders we've been looking for, and then go forward with that mindset. So when I say don't be a criminal, it's not a joke. It is serious. As be a better human is another way to say it. Don't be a criminal and be a better human. I'm going to include that in that. Understand the world is not a safe place. And it's not. Like a lot of people say, women should be able to wear mini skirts in the middle of the CBD at midnight, and she should be safe. Absolutely, in an ideal world, she should be. But unfortunately, there are evil people with evil intent. So you need to be responsible and take the necessary measures to avoid any kind of catastrophe. So no one's going to walk around with a wad of cash in the middle of the city center. That's ridiculous. You're just not going to do it. So it's about just making sure that you don't take chances, you're aware of your surroundings, and you take precautions. Again, this is in your hands. Accidents will still happen, of course, and there'll be certain circumstances you won't be able to avoid, of course. But where you can, you need to be careful. Herman who? Herman Mashaba. Jacques, I can never imagine approaching Colleen for advice on the Constitution. Sorry. He's just he's too much in the old mindset in terms of understanding the South African landscape. We're gonna actually rather focus on a younger generation. And maybe that's why it is hard to find experts, because the life experience is not there and the years of working experience is not there. But it's important that the people that are writing the Constitution for the future of this country actually have many years of future left. That's extremely important. We'll find our peoples. Okay, so that's just number 1 and 2. Number 3, get a gun license and carry a registered firearm. So don't carry an illegal firearm, register it, okay? Respect that side of the law. Not everyone's going to do this. And I think some people shiver in their boots with the thought, and I've had this feedback from people before, with the thought that more people will be walking around with guns. Because why? Some people have tempers, some people are hot-headed, and we don't want people just shooting up the place. But the thing is, the process in which to get a license needs to be such that crazy maniacs won't have access to weapons. That's simple. Legally, that is. So if you feel you're able to, if you feel you are responsible enough, and if you pass the necessary competency tests, then by all means, if you feel your life could potentially be in danger significantly, then you need to arm yourself. And you don't have to arm yourself with the gun. You can get creative. Just ask a couple of young boys, and they'll come up with a whole host of potential weapons that don't need to be licensed. Number 4, protect your property where you work and live. So that is your responsibility. And, with we will talk still in the future about land ownership. Land ownership is so key. In fact, in our banners, we say gun and land ownership there in one phrase. Land ownership is key to human existence. Not land rental, land ownership. Not just property ownership, but land ownership. I'm not talking about expensive agricultural land. I'm talking about enough land for you to raise your family and build a business and grow wealth, so that on which you can do other things and build upon. That doesn't really exist in this modern democracy, fake democracy that we have. Property is unaffordable for many people. And so that's why we have such an imbalance in this country. That's a big one that we're going to have to fix. But protect your property where you work and live. You might not own your own property, so you might rent. Either way, you need to make responsible choices. Number 5, install surveillance within your property boundaries, which only you have access to. This one is so important because neighborhood watchers will get together and community policing forums will get together, and they'll come up with all kinds of illustrious plans to combat crime, all of which often include surveillance of some kind that is somehow linked to either SAPS or some kind of centralized monitoring station. Hopefully not installed to your municipality, but could be. And in order to remain free, we need to make sure that we don't supply and demand and supply the very infrastructure that will be our downfall, because it will be spying on us in a lockdown situation where we may not converse with neighbors or set foot on our lawn, similar to what we experienced not so long ago. So it's important that if you have surveillance, you're the one, you personally and your family are the ones that have access to that. It mustn't be in the cloud, it mustn't be connected to some other person's control room or whatever, or some government's control room. It needs to be in your hands. That is extremely important. Send your family for self-defense training. I've heard a couple of success stories of people that have almost been attacked, but because of their training, they were able to mitigate the threat very nicely. And I think that's an important one. If your kids are old enough, send your family members and vulnerable family members, especially if they're not carrying firearms, for self-defense training. Have a family emergency plan for various situations. That's number 7, and that's something we also will cover in Omega training, which will take place. That one will be module 4. No, module 3 actually. That'll be module 3. Have an emergency plan for various situations. So you need to look at various situations. Think about it during the day. Your kids are at school. They might be at different schools. Your spouse is at work. You're at some other place. Maybe you're at home. Maybe you're also at some other workplace. So you're far from each other. So during the daytime working hours, you need a plan if certain things happen. If there's an earthquake, if there's a lockdown, if there's an invasion from some psycho country like America, who knows? But you need to come up with the scenarios you think are probable, plan for them. Be involved in your community. Knowledge is power. So you need to know what's going on in your community. And also, this also plays into Omega training, which includes building relationships with people in your community, your neighbors, and people that are influential, and people that are in key organizations. And then number 9, don't wait for the police to rescue you. That's an important one. I think often people, it's not just in the crime scope, it's in various situations. People always are waiting for the government to come fix the problem. There are certain circumstances where you do need to go to a police station, where you do need SAPS's intervention, but don't wait for them to rescue. You can't always count on them. So make sure that you're in a situation where you don't have to wait for them to rescue you. Be your own first responder. And then number 10, which I think is probably my favorite one. Never, ever, 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 ever trust any government, even in a new system. This is particularly integral to a healthy democracy that prioritizes individual liberty. So some people might be like, okay, the government right now sucks. It's terrible. Everything's failing. It's awful. It must go. And then imagine OHM successful now in 2024. And we change the constitution, bring about the new structure, new political system, new voting papers, everything. There's a president. There are new members of parliament. Everything's brand new. New ministers, new commissioners of Chapter 9 institutions, new Chapter 9 institutions, etc. All of it brand new, very hopeful, very awesome, improved democracy. You cannot trust government still. Even I'd say if I had to run as the president of South Africa and if I had to win, I'm still going to say to you, don't trust the government. Don't trust me. You shouldn't have trust in the paradigm when talking about government ever. Never trust the government. That is so important. So the mistake anyone would make is that the system has changed. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief and goes back to being complacent. That would be an absolute disaster. That cannot happen, because then that would have been an absolute failure of the entire plan. There is a statement coming on the citizen's role as well, which we'll release, which I hope just completes the entire picture for everybody. Phil says, even when you carry a firearm, de-escalation or avoidance is always the first option. Police, what police? I've heard, I'm the first person to be very skeptical with anything involving the popo, but I've heard success stories where police have really come through to help people. And I can't deny that that has happened many times. SAPS is only there for the case number for insurance. Yeah. SAPS are crime historians. They only record events after the fact. Absolutely love that. And absolutely there's a role to play in the fact if someone infringes on your right, like they steal something from you, I'm talking about in the new system, or threatens your life in some way, then you need to record it, needs to go into the system so processes can be followed so that the perpetrator is dealt with. But yes, enough on that. So those are the 10 points. That's our crime plan that puts the power in your hands. Now, what of the people who don't want the power in their hands? That's what concerns me sometimes. The government's not going to come save you. Yes, we can improve SAPs. We can improve a lot of things systematically in government administration. But if you're not taking full responsibility, our country will continuously, perpetually fall into a form of tyranny or the other. Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm going to read this whole thing. I'll read aspects of it. Any questions thus far? Thanks, Lizette. Jacques, absolutely, there are organized crime syndicates outside of government and international spy networks. It's not SAPS's job. I'm talking about crime that affects people on a day-to-day basis, because that's what people are calling for. There's an entire structure that we've set out. I don't know if you've read the manifesto. National government, their first most important mandate will be to protect the borders of the country, which will include things like military, and it will include things like intelligence, international relations. And then we have the Chapter 9 institutions, if you're talking about international spy networks as well. And I believe all of that will cover it, because that's about strengthening the state. That's a national mandate that is very, very important. So let's cover some of the other little bits and pieces. And then maybe that's half an hour. So maybe we can cover the education plan just a little bit. Okay, so the right to self-defense is the cornerstone of liberty. I believe that our Constitution actually doesn't promote self-defense at all. The way that the Constitution has been interpreted, especially by government officials, I've seen this time and time again, not just with crime, with other things like education. So there'll be a right enshrined in the Constitution. Now the government gives itself the responsibility of ensuring that right is given to us, instead of that right being inherent. And because it's inherent, it's our responsibility for that right to be realized. So that mindset has to change. Everyone in government, and I believe most people in government right now, do come from a more communistic mindset, and that mindset does tend to obviously uphold the government as the savior of all suffering. The irony, but that's just the way it is. And so that's why I speak a lot about changing the mindset in government. And even though it's an abstract thing, it's just because it's abstract doesn't make it any less important. It's very urgent that the mindset is changed. So we need a mindset that puts liberty first always. So many people might argue that new gun control laws will lessen crimes. However, criminals do not obtain weapons legally, and they are not responsible licensed gun owners. Very important to note. Criminals are going to do crime, no matter what laws exist, obviously. I mean, that's why they're criminals. So citizens definitely need to make sure they are strong enough to withstand that, and not wait on government to protect them, as we've covered later. Then, yes, OHM's restructuring government that places individual as the highest form of government. And then, under the current constitution, criminals are aware that their rights are more important than the rights of law-abiding citizens. Well, they have free reign. And that is evident in many of our communities, especially here in Cape Town, and is extremely tragic. And criminals usually have no regard for human life and are not afraid to commit a crime because their rights are protected. So think about it this way. I like to think about it in terms of what Jordan Peterson said in one of his videos that I watched many, many, many months ago, and I showed my children as well, that you actually you have to be extremely dangerous. I'm paraphrasing. Those weren't his exact words. But the ultimate message was be dangerous, but choose to be kind and soft, kind of vibe. Meaning that you want to be dangerous, but you want to be a good person that doesn't hurt other people. You don't want to be weak and vulnerable, because it's never going to serve you. Because those that are evil will always have the upper hand. And I really love that philosophy. I think it's really, really awesome. so many single women with children or a child makes these things more difficult and, in a sense, more essential. I am a single child, only child, who grew up with a single mom, and she carried a firearm for many years. I can't remember how many years precisely. She did get rid of it at some point, but I was quite used to that. That was normal in our household. So I think that's definitely, I suppose, an inspiration. Don't wait for someone to save you, right? And this plays into the workshops that Des and I did last year. We put so many limits on our abilities through the mental biases and mental blocks that we have. There's no limit to what you can do to protect yourself, the skills you can acquire and obtain that will help you feel empowered so that you make better decisions and you stay out of danger yourself. You don't want government to decide what's dangerous for you. Remember that. We never want to put power in the hands of government ever again. And then that covers everything. We just specify citizens have the right to bear arms, and there obviously needs to be thorough screening and competency. It's not going to be like America where every Walmart has a wall of guns you can buy. I think that's a bit ridiculous. And then back to the constitutional change. Our constitution has to specify the order in which things need to happen, self-governance being first always. So that's us. That's our crime plan for now. Next is education, which is quite an extensive one. It's like 3 pages long, so we can cover it. Any questions so far? Yes, a good man is capable of extreme violence but has self-control. That's what's been the biggest failure with the millennial school system, because it teaches you that it is noble and taking the moral high ground to not be capable of extreme violence, to be weaker, to be the person that is vulnerable, essentially. If you look at the life orientation textbooks, and I've read it from my children's books when they were at school a few years ago, many years ago, 4 years ago, how to cope with bullying and things like that. It was just a weak mindset that they are indoctrinating our children with. And I think it's terrible. So thanks for that comment, Terrence. I need to find education quickly. So that's crime. Please share that everywhere. And then we'll quickly, very briefly go through the main points of education, which I'd like you to share everywhere as well. Next is coming national sovereignty, which will incorporate the bigger things that I think Jacques was mentioning earlier. There we go. Lana says, I know this may be crazy, but I did a self-defense course. One of the first things they taught us was the way you carry yourself. Don't look vulnerable. That is, very, very true. That's pretty much the simplest. It's very much the vibe you give off. It's like how dogs can smell fear, so do criminals. Education's next. Very, very, very quickly, even though it's 3 pages long. Again, this is about putting the responsibility in the hands of individuals first, changing the mindset so that homeschooling becomes more normal. Right now, it's like a fringe thing to do. Cottage schooling, micro-schooling, and private schooling also becomes more normal. And then a public school system needs to be the last resort. I understand that in the first years, maybe even first decade of a new system, public schooling might be the chosen option for quite a while. And that's fine as long as the mindset evolves to the point where it becomes a more community orientated or individual orientated solution. But for public schooling, we've proposed many, many changes. It's really trying to move away from this industrial era schooling system of instruction and conformity, because that instruction and conformity, although it does serve certain purposes, I believe that can be achieved in different ways. So this conformity, instruction and conformity and obedience, I think it's done a disservice to the whole world, because I believe all schools, specifically in the Western countries, operate like this. It's why there aren't real solutions to problems that we have. It's because of the school system. Just like how organizations are captured with this control mindset, it's the same with education, how it stunts creativity. And especially as you enter tertiary education, the freedom with which to explore things outside certain confines slowly disintegrates, almost in a peer pressure kind of way. So that all people are doing with their peer studied reviews are just boosting one another's nonsense without actually looking out of the box for tangible solutions. And so we want to change the mindset completely from 0 to 6 years, primary school, high school, and tertiary education, where we really empower children and facilitate their learning adventure. That's what education should be, a learning adventure. And I really am convinced that if we do that, we will, in a single generation, start to see solutions very quickly being implemented for things that we thought were impossible problems to solve. And I can't wait for that. Did I share the link? I can't remember. I did not. Okay. I'm sharing the link to the education plan quickly. There we go. So I had my 4 children in a public school, and it was a mediocre public school. It definitely wasn't a bad public school, but it certainly wasn't like the top public schools out there. It was somewhere in the middle. And so they had that experience. It was close to our house. I wasn't in the mood to drive an hour in the morning to send them to another school. So I made the decision to choose a closer school. And anyway, there they were. And it seemed okay, whatever. But since homeschooling, which happened in 2020, it's definitely an evolution. I'm not sure how many people here are homeschoolers. This community generally does have a couple of homeschoolers in it. What I realized is the freer your children are, the more intelligent they become. Their creativity develops faster and their intellect develops faster, the more freedom they have in their learning environment. So even though we do cherry pick bits and pieces of curriculums from different sources here and there, and they have work where they're sitting down at a desk every day, there's still a lot of freedom in which they choose how to spend their time. And that freedom, as well as sense of responsibility, is actually what develops a child. So what children need more than school is a healthy home environment. And unfortunately, that is not the reality. And that is why we're offering a public schooling solution, because right now the situation and reality is that in the majority, maybe not majority, but in a lot of homes in the country, there isn't a healthy home environment. Sometimes it's because of parents, sometimes it's because of economic circumstances, sometimes it's a combination. Either way, that's where the public school system mitigates those issues. But we want society to progress as government gets smaller, so that those issues become less and less and less over time. But essentially, if I have to go through it, ages 0 to 6, we want ages 0 to 6 if possible. for those kids to be at home with a mom, preferably, or a family member if possible. And whether it's a teacher or a family member, that teacher or family member needs to be trained or knowledgeable in what it takes to raise a healthy child, because between the ages of 0 and 6, it is such an impressionable age. The brain is really developing at a rapid pace. So what happens in those years is extremely important. But obviously, there will be situations where children have to go to daycare or ECD centers, and they have to be equipped to foster the child's creativity. If you're looking at primary school, we really want to focus on all kinds of arts, performance, visual, music, everything, as well as sport, reading, writing, and basic maths. Any other subject will be secondary. And this is so that many reasons. We have to foster that creativity, because all creativity is problem solving. We need to foster creativity if we want children that are going to grow up and turn into problem solvers one day. And then the other problem is many kids experience deep trauma at home. And so when they come to the classroom and a teacher is standing in the front trying to instruct them in something, nothing really sinks in because their nervous system is stuck. And so that's why we really want to incorporate music, performance arts, sports, all kind of things that gets the body moving and gets the children working together in a creative way. That's going to really help shake the trauma out of them so that they are receptive to knowledge, well, to information that they can then turn into knowledge. And then in high school, we're taking quite a multi-layered approach here, and we really want to, the vision, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the vision essentially is to take the high school age child and expose him to as many different things as possible so that they can see what they're drawn to, work with career guidance counselors too at a specific age, and then later on in high school, specialize in specific subjects that they're particularly interested in, with a focus on entrepreneurship no matter what they do. And then finally, last quarter of the last year of high school. So many parties have, what have they done? They have suggested conscription, compulsory military service. And I understand why. I really do. The youth are lost. I was a lost youth. The youth are very lost. Bad parents are out there. School systems failed them. So I understand the mentality of wanting that conscription to fix the youth to a degree, but I say no. We're not forcing anyone to serve the military, but we can take a milder form of basic training and put it into the school system so that the 18, 17, 18, 19-year-olds actually have learned the discipline, learn the teamwork, working with other people, and learn to overcome physical challenges that they thought were impossible. I believe these things will set them up for success later in life. Ultimately, I'll just read the last few points. Adrian is correct. The governments don't want intelligent children, otherwise they'll be aware of the deceit. They want stupid people because they're easier to control. Mainstream schools are basically indoctrination centers. Absolutely agree with that. Thanks, Auntie Weirdo. Nice name. So who would be responsible for the firearm licensing process and decisions? Well, I think it can remain the same. Obviously, we'll improve how government works, improve the people. When we talk about government administration, we want to introduce psychometrics and continuous training to improve people that work within government administration. So anyone that just doesn't fit the standard will lose their job in government and be replaced by someone effective. So I just want to close off with the education side of things. What are we proposing will result in the education? So this is the vision we had, and we work backwards from there. New ideas will be birthed into society, which will bring about new inventions and advancements in science and technology. I think that's extremely important. Inventions have also been absolutely killed. Like, if you have an invention that's going to destroy some kind of industry, you'll probably find yourself not living anymore. And so I hope that in South Africa, as we get national sovereignty right in the new system and strengthen our borders and military, we'll be a safe place for inventors to come with their inventions that will solve common problems right now that are either expensive or impractical. And then the next generation will be geared more towards problem solving, critical thinking, and effective conflict management. And that's why we have such a focus on creativity in the school system. Children will develop into resilient adults who can look after themselves and overcome any challenges. So this is when you look at the details of all the things we're proposing. If you look at the ramifications and details of the things we're proposing and what it means to the actual child's experience, you'll see that it will result in this: resilient adults who can look after themselves because they will be given responsibility and overcome challenges. And then we will have a population where most people are well-rounded, level-headed, mature adults who make better decisions than previous generations, thus improving society. And then lastly, because of this new way of educating, because it will foster and establish self-esteem at an early age, it will be harder for the government or any organization or person to try exert control over the population. I think that's so important. I think the school system definitely does tend to kill self-esteem. It's that obedience, conformity, instruction mindset. And when we can change that, we won't have a population that can be controlled ever again. The problem with the society currently, and we experienced it during the lockdown, obviously, is how obedient people were. And as much as people hated the government, they were so quick to obey the government when they feared for their lives, literally. And so with the new education system, we can actually get rid of all of those problems. Nico says, I've observed people come from wrong side of the tracks, become excellent soldiers, or sorry excuses for such. What a child learns at home by mother's knee and father's hand is important. But I'd like to counter that and say even those with exactly, that's also what I had in mind, is they will know exactly what it needs and they will be responsible, and they can seek that out if they want to as adults. Louis says first aid and animal welfare should be an integral part of schooling. Yes, that's what I forgot to mention. The last year of junior school, grade 7, would be focused on survival skills very much, which will incorporate basic first aid. But, legally, you actually have to be 16 to have proper first aid training. But there's lots of survival skills a child can learn at that grade 7 year. And that mindset of learning survival at that young age, that is what will also foster responsibility and self-discipline in kids. What have I missed? Conscription should only be wartime basic training, including personal neatness, bearing, public attitude, physical fitness to one's ability should be encouraged, not forced. Agreed, encouraged, not forced. But it'll be part of the school system. Ha ha ha. Nothing's forced. Do any countries in the African continent have land ownership other than built-up urban residential areas? Not sure. Okay, so those are the two plans. We also have, I don't know why it's not on the website. I have to go back to my laptop and reload it. We have a statement on the Bellable Comprehensive Sexuality Education and the ECE Gender Ideology Toolkit, which is frightening that the government's rolling out. So you can look out for that a little later. And then tomorrow, we'll be bringing you a statement on national sovereignty and international threats. That one's going to be a fun one, probably my favorite. So that's everything, peoples. That's crime. That's education. This isn't a overwhelmingly extensive solution, primarily because we want to approach this first from the perspective of what we as individuals and then later communities can do. And then later on, worry about the government solution side of things. You'll see with education, we do cover the public schooling side of the solution. With national sovereignty, that will be a very government-centric solution as well, because that is the mandate of national government to protect the borders. But generally speaking, with these plans rolling out, it's going to be a individualized, single person or family orientated or community orientated solution based plan. Lynette says, what I remember for being bullied in primary school in the 1970s, fear paralyzes your mind. Whoa. Sounds like the motto of the government. Definitely. Or the media, should I say. Yeah, that's how media works, isn't it? Fear paralyzes your mind. I have a book, Self-Sufficiency by James Seymour, would be good in the library. I think as Mito is taking over our internet apps, I think it's going to be increasingly important to collect non-fiction books. I think we very, very soon, I can envision in our family already that we're going to definitely be heavily relying more and more on books than on Google or YouTube. I think it's going to be very, very important. So if anyone ever sees cheap secondhand books for sale, try buy them up or let me know and I'll try buy them up. No conscription ever in a war, people will volunteer in their droves. Yeah, able people probably would because of the situation. Conscription is slavery, I agree. And you know why I see it as slavery? Because I have two boys of my own, and I can't imagine them being 18 or 16. I can't imagine them being 16 and being sent to war, forced by the government. I'd rather go in their place, to be honest. That is terrible. I would never, ever want that to happen. And so I get very nervous when politicians with lots of support throw statements around like that. Conscription this, conscription that. It's sad. Best soldiers I ever served with, says Nico, were volunteers like me. Not forced. Yeah, not forced. Okay, everyone, I think I'm done. It's almost an hour. I have to get some stuff done for OHM. It's been busy. Soon you'll see the links to all the interviews on the website. That's what I'm going to work on now. Lauren, my boys would volunteer to go. There's no ways. I would let them. I wouldn't want them to. Can you imagine? Sad, sad, sad. So let's make sure with national sovereignty, the statement we will be reading tomorrow, and when we do implement this new government, we really do need that Sun Tzu's approach, that victory is, it's only a victory if there's no conflicts. We need to avoid that here in South Africa and protect our borders from international threats in a way that doesn't cause direct conflict. Quite a task, but I'm sure possible. Thanks, everyone. Please share these PDFs everywhere, as well as the initial manifesto. You know, it's taking a lot of time to convince average people who just think along normal, conventional lines to comprehend the urgency of system change when all they want is their pothole fixed or load shedding to end. It's very hard for people to connect the dots, and maybe this is something everyone in this chat can help with. It's hard to get people to connect the dots that leads to system change. For them, it's just about ousting the ANC, and that's it. It's very difficult for conventionally thinking people to understand the system needs to change. But hopefully, as more people speak about system change, they will change their minds about that. But still, that's the challenge that we have right now in these elections with 2 weeks to go, is to take people that have swallowed up the indoctrination they've been given for years, like voting for a small or new party is a wasted vote, like we have too many parties, we don't, and all kinds of other things. ANC is the biggest threat, not true. And then that fear and that divide and conquer tactic that works so well that the media uses. People need to somehow awaken to the fact that system change needs to happen urgently. It's not a nice to have, it needs to happen urgently. Sue Dixon, let's do some logistical business here quickly. Sue is saying, can we volunteer as a voting station observer or do you have to register us? Okay, so I've been calling it the wrong thing. You're an observer if you're not with a party, then you can be an observer. But if you're with a party, you're a party agent. So I will have to register you. I need to find out what forms the IEC is using. Usually I just did a little letterhead thing saying, I, Lauren Ventia Bernardo, give this person the right to act on behalf of OHM as a party agent. But now I need to figure out if there's a specific form or not. They might have had a specific form. And then I'm going to start chatting to everyone about where you can have a voting station and where you can be stationed at a voting station. If you want to be an observer or party agent, just for the experience of it, then let me know. But the most important thing at this stage is to have people outside the voting station at a table with a gazebo or some branding or the other, just so that there's visibility. The more visibility there is, the more likelihood of people voting. Yeah, I agree more than Ron. Hi. People seem to prefer comfort over freedom. It so reminds me of that Pink Floyd song, Comfortably Numb. Is that the one? Yes. Just listen to those lyrics. It's the same thing. Human psychology is very interesting. Human nature is interestinger. And it's probably one of the biggest challenges to being in politics. Hypothetically speaking, which party you won't go into alliance with? Are you saying which party we won't be going to alliance with? A little bit of a spelling mistake's making me confused there. So no one. We're not going to alliance with any party. Ever. We're not forming coalitions. I'll explain now. So what we're doing, once we get a seat, so maybe we get a seat in Parliament now. That would be amazing. If we get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 seats, even more amazing. Unrealistic to even think about more. Then we have seats in National Assembly, in the national legislature, where laws get made for the country. We will approach individuals, doesn't matter which parties they are from, we're going to treat them as individuals. And we're going to discuss with them one-on-one the changes we want in the Constitution. And we're going to get buy-in from them for all the different changes we want in the Constitution. For instance, voting directly for the president, getting rid of taxpayer funding of parties, etc. Some, I'm sure, they will say absolutely no to some of the changes. Others, I'm sure they could possibly agree with. Eventually, we want to get to a point, after we've spoken to all 300 and something of them, get to a point where we can actually present the new Constitution to the country with a stronger public buy-in. We believe it'll get passed eventually. But we're not alliancing ourselves with anyone. Absolutely not. How can we? Just look at who funds all of them. Impossible. Not happening. If the ANC gets 49% and they need your 1%, what would you say? My 1% for what? Okay, so the ANC, there's a Bella bill. Okay, it's been passed. Woohoo. And it's pretend it hasn't been passed, and now they want to pass it, and they need my vote. I'm going to obviously say no, because I don't agree with the Bella bill. So every time there's a new law, I'm going to look at it. If I'm the one in Parliament, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, does this fit into OHM's 6 principles and 4 values? Yes or no? Probably not, because I think there should be less laws anyway. And so we will vote against that law. It's not about voting with a party or not. It's about voting for what's right. The first law proposal that OHM submits to the table will cause one hell of a hoo-ha. We're counting on that, which will alert so many of the oblivious citizens that that is indeed an alternate way of thinking and acting. Yeah, I know. It's a process. It's a slow process. It's very, very slow. But anyway, thanks everybody. It's bedtime, or should I say work time. So thanks for being part of this live stream. Yeah, no coalitions. It's never necessary to go into a coalition. Why do people want to be in coalitions? I don't get it. I mean, in local governments where they have to vote for a mayor, I kind of get it. But it's about what... that's the problem. Parties don't have any backbone or moral compass, and that's the actual problem. Okay. Remember that everything is on the OHM website, ohm.org.za. And then there'll be more plans loaded onto the website tomorrow. And then perhaps I'll do another live stream if I remember. There we go. Thank you, everybody. Let's just remember and focus on our number one priority, and that is to be free. That's all we want. Recreating a government structure and the political system to be free. I think that's something this collective community wants. And that's something we need to work towards every day. And it's something that we will work towards for the rest of our entire lives. Never forget that. Even after system change, you still have to work at maintaining freedom. Good night, everyone, and see you in the next live stream with the next OHM plan.